person at the gravity center of the internet. And as a consequence, because the internet was not designed to be an ID infrastructure, the internet is lacking identification. The fact is that lacking identification, a lot of companies are making a lot of money because they are creating some kind of de facto identification environment. But this is against the rights of data protection internationally. So let's just use a very simple case, which is represented in our kids, even in ourselves. It's been abused by predators, which are intentionally stealing your personal data and your IDs. The consequence of that is enormous, because data has become now a commodity. International companies, and they are growing very fast now, the market is valuing them accordingly the number of IDs that they are able to monetize. So companies like LinkedIn, Facebook, and others, basically they are reselling the users they subscribe to them. So a company does not have any more products or hardware, it has people. But what they are selling is your personal identification. So in the optimal world, which is the world that we are building with WISeKey, the PII, which is your personal identifiable information, which is the information that traces you, second slide, Chris. It traces you to where you are, who you belong, your address, your eventual financial information. That information is encrypted and is stored in the device that you would like to store. It could be in your SIM or your mobile phone, could be in USB stick, or could be in your virtual browser. That information then is never provided to any third party. That information is yours, and in our views, and that is another concept that we're bringing to the world, a digital ID is not your bank account, your nationality, or your health certificate. It is actually your birth certificate. This is equivalent to the one that you receive when you are born. They're giving you a piece of paper that says you are Chinese or you're born in America or Europe, and with that document you can trade or any other documents in the future until the point that eventually you trade that against your ID. The importance of moving from this de facto ID environment where companies provide you the ID rather you own your own ID will put the person in control of his transactions. Next slide, please. And will allow basically now, in the case of Snow White, to be able to certify with whom she is talking on the internet. We'll be able to also certify to where she's buying things on the internet, because another problem of identification we are facing is not only people identification, but also sites identification. A lot of the websites that you're accessing, actually, they are fake websites. And where a man in the middle is putting a website thinking that you're dealing with your bank or with your insurance company or with your retailer, and actually they are stealing your information and your personal data. So in order for us to sustain the growth of the internet, in order for respecting the geopolitical needs of countries, we have to adopt a strong authenticated environment. This environment has to be in line also with national sovereignty. I was in the UN many years to understand that countries treat IDs as a geopolitical asset. It's like water, it's like electricity, it's like anything. You don't want to depend on another country issuing the IDs for you, you want to have it at national level. But those IDs at national level, you want to trade internationally. And the trend now is in China, in India, in many countries, they are moving towards issuing a national ID infrastructure. So the good news is that very soon we're going to be entering into a transactional internet. The internet that for first time in history can become what we all expect it to be, a trustworthy environment, and an environment where we're not going to need to compromise on personal data just because the fact we want to have a social experience.
Thanks very much, Carlos. Any immediate reaction?
For companies in many areas, to be more efficient, to outreach faster and better and more transactional to their own staff, to secure their supply chain management by reducing counterfeiting. Actually, in Switzerland, my company provides identification for watches, high-end watches, that thanks to that identification, the owner of the watch can prove that this watch is not a counterfeited watch. We are now moving into other sectors. So I think the big opportunity for the society is that we are entering into a world where everything is going to be identified, unidentified. We are talking about 4.5 billion SIMs already out there, but we're also talking by 2020 of 50 billion transactions of objects that are going to be talking among themselves. Those are SIM technology and the possibility to just tweet from one SIM to another. So this is going to create imagine the Earth is like an organism, and each of those objects are a cell, and they're going to be able to send intelligence into each other. So I think we are very near to that. It's still a problem to be solved, is that technology moves faster than the standards, and in particularly than national legislations. So some countries are going to try to abuse of that infrastructure against other countries. And I guess this is going to be a challenge, and if we solve that challenge by adding the right legislation and standards, then the opportunity is huge. Otherwise, we might enter into a problem because we're going to be in a dependency kind of situation versus some super technology powers.
Right, fantastic. Something I find very interesting there is in this highly networked world, is it going to drive, is this competitiveness going to depend on an organisation or a society or a country's ability to be open and to be able to source opinion and source innovation from the distributed network.
This is technology for the future. Actually, we are always, maybe the press is giving a lot of emphasis to Facebook and the fact that we have 700 million people registered, but this is peanuts. I mean, this is very starting. First of all, Facebook is not 700 million. If you really see the real people behind with the authenticated profile, maybe you go back to 100 million, and the rest are on the fake sites. The potential here is not 700 million, it's 5 billion IDs. I mean, we are talking about 5 billion mobile phones. If we cannot use Facebook in China, it's not because of social network experience, because the ID issue related to Chinese have a problem, and there is normal that they have a problem, because they don't want people centralizing their IDs outside the country. The same problem is even in Switzerland. I mean, we have banks and we have to protect secrecy, and every country has its own arguments why they want to maintain some kind of control of the infrastructure. But that was my point before. If we manage to dissociate the aspects of usability, all the things that you can do with IDs and all the nice things that brings to the society, with the control mechanisms, so you respect geopolitical and country interests, then we have really an infrastructure that we can start to play with. And this is not anymore Facebook. This is a global infrastructure where you can bring 7 billion people and create all types of services, because once you have IDs, then you can put services on the cloud, and people can find services anywhere in the world, from whatever in the world, without the need to establish a relation. So that will really create a big advancements for the society. We are nearly there, but maybe we should take focus from success stories of companies and more into national experience and observe why people are not adopting those experiences. What are the real reasons, and analyze that.
Great, thank you, Carlos. I think Kenny had something to add, particularly in the China context.
It's happening in the Arab Spring, but it's also a lot of activism has happened during that process. And we have to be smart enough to dissociate what is real, truly information emerging from the citizens that they are living the moment, whether this is a journalist sitting in a city somewhere in an occidental country just manipulating the information for obtaining a specific reaction from that people. So we have to be very careful how we use social media. It's not as naive, that's what I put as snowball. It's not as naive as it looks like. Social media can be highly manipulated for commercial or political reasons.
I'm going to
invented Facebook, and you are the first one adopting that. In Europe, we're saying we want the right to disappear on the internet. It means that we really want one day, I'm not a teenager anymore, now by the way, I want to get a job, and I don't want all these pictures of me drinking in a bar to be still available, and I want to delete them. So I mean, it should be constitutionally a right to delete my content because it's my content. So the right of disappearing on the internet is a serious concern. And actually, it's preventing those companies to grow, because many of those companies now, they are being forced to add technology that allows you actually to delete your data if you don't want that anymore.
And is it a concern of young people in addition?
But the young people, we get old, and the day the young people looks for a job, is people like everybody is. I mean, a young people during the time is young, it's normal that they don't care. But the moment this becomes an adult that gets married and the wife starts to see all the girlfriend he had, that is a different concern that adds into the equation, and thus concern you might want to have a key there and say, okay, from that day I don't want to share that data anymore. So I think we can live in a world of both. It doesn't need to be either black or white. I think social network is great, being able to share content is great, but being able to delete that content and just ask the provider to stop selling that content, which is mine, should be a constitutional right. It should be a right that companies should be applying in that service.
So Nathan, a quick remark to your question. There are actually experimental studies that have been done at Carnegie Mellon that try and explain why it is that people say one thing about privacy and do another. And it has to do with the fact that they don't think it applies to themselves, or they think it's so far out in the future that they don't see the potential impact of this to themselves. I guess the one other point, I think I made the point earlier about the need for control, much the manner that Carlos articulated. The other aspect, I think, of empowerment at the local level is the fact that individuals in many countries, particularly in developing countries, feel that they have a voice, a capacity to talk to government. Because, for instance, being able to report on potholes on roads, taking pictures of them and sending them up to a site so that they can actually be fixed. Drawing attention to the need for public services to be delivered quite the way they should be, or maps where you have Google Maps that now overlay crime incidents on neighborhoods. These kinds of things allow for a way for citizens to work with government to point them to where problems are in ways that, this goes to my point, I use the word information asymmetry to really relate to these kinds of examples where you are empowering individuals to actually be able to talk and interact with government with data that they didn't previously have in their hands.
Thanks. We're almost out of time.